Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. So, first things first, happy Juneteenth to everybody. It's an official American holiday. By the way, Texas was the first state to recognize Juneteenth officially, but lots of people have recognized Juneteenth for many, many years. But if you're not familiar with the origins of the holiday, basically what happened is on June 19th, and by the way, tomorrow is a federal holiday, but June 19th, or Juneteenth, in 1865, slaves that were in Galveston, Texas, finally received the news they had been freed. Now, they had actually been freed by the Emancipation Proclamation that went into effect on January 1st, 1863, because we've talked about how the Battle of Antietam kind of gave the kind of Union victory at the Battle of Antietam gave Lincoln the political capital to issue a preliminary Emancipation Proclamation, and then he did the full one that went into effect January 1, 1863. But in addition to the fact that they didn't know about it, because a lot of them, people would have kept information from them, this is, well, at least 2 months, over 2 months after the South had surrendered and the war had kind of ended. Now, the surrender of the Army of Northern Virginia at Appomattox, it took a while for stuff out west to get settled up. But anyway, that's when the slaves in Galveston finally found out that they had been freed, and they were the last ones to find out. So that's the origin of Juneteenth. But I want to say something about Juneteenth, and I want to tell you why, even if you're white, it's a holiday that matters. A lot of people talk about July 4th as being Independence Day, and I'm down with that. But you got to understand that July 4th is when the Declaration of Independence was promulgated, right? Jefferson writes it. It's basically a legal argument about why the colonies should have independence. But keep in mind that was just a document. No one was actually independent. Everybody in the United States was still a subject of the king. But Juneteenth is truly an Independence Day. People were freed, and that was the last group of people that knew they were freed, but they were truly, had received their independence. So that's kind of the nuance. And I hope over time Juneteenth becomes recognized by all Americans as the most, as a holiday that's as important as July 4th. The other thing today, happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. So hopefully your kids were nice to you for at least one day. Maybe you got a tie that you're not going to wear. I have been asking my kids for a while now if they would just get me a bobcat for Father's Day. Now, my youngest last year said, "Dad, what are you going to do with a bobcat? We don't have any place to keep a wild animal." And I said, no, I mean a bobcat, like a skid loader. Although I kind of do like, I know lots of people make skid loaders. I just like the Bobcat brand. They got all the little attachments and all the things you can do, and I know everybody does. I just like Bobcats. And so this year, apparently my kids did go out and try to get me a Bobcat. One of my daughters told me that it's on back order, which I totally get because of the supply. You know how the supply chain is if you drive a truck, right? So anyway, that's that. So I want to talk about, this is going to be my annual, you're just finished high school or college, now what do you do, broadcast, video. So let's talk about that. Okay, so you finished high school or college or trade school, and now you're looking for a job. Now, if you went to trade school, probably you have a trade like, pipe fitter or welder or carpenter or plumber. And, hopefully the place you went is going to help you find a position. But let's say you finish college and you're like, well, the only jobs are, entry-level jobs that still want experience, which I never understood, right? Like, it's like an entry-level job paying, like $32 a year, but they want you to have experience. I mean, how much freaking experience do they want for $32 a year? Your college loans are going to come due in November because you get 6 months grace period. Or maybe you just finished high school, but you're kicking around your hometown. You don't really want to stay there. It's kind of funny. I was in Love's the other day in Greenville, Illinois, and there was this gal at the register, and I don't even know, like, maybe she was just conversing with the woman in front of me, but she mentioned kind of loud that Friday, which would have been 2 days ago, was going to be her 21st birthday. And I'm like, are you gonna get out of Greenville finally? She's like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I'm like, well, go get a CDL. You can go wherever you want. And one of the things, I'm not here to advocate for any given industry, but what I am here to advocate for is doing something constructive and really maybe making a fair amount of money to set yourself up for what maybe you end up deciding you really want to do. A lot of people get out of school, whether it's high school or college, and they work dead-end jobs while trying to figure out what they want to do. But here's what you need to focus on, right? Figuring out what you want to do doesn't mean that you shouldn't move the ball down the field, right? Take a job that's going to get you experience that matters, right? And when I say experience that matters, I mean a job that people can relate to, that is important to them and they get it, right? Like, and I'm going to give you two quick examples of industries that I know are hiring, and in some cases where you could basically start out making making near or more than $100,000 a year. The first one is what I do for a living, okay? There are people at Prime that come here and within the first year, they've figured out how to have an annualized income that's in the six figures, right? Now, it is hard work, right? Nobody's going to hand it to you on a platter, right? Nobody gives you anything. But the opportunity is there for you to get to where you want to be, right? It's not commission sales. It's not some stupid telemarketing job. It's not selling insurance for some, sketchy company where the harder you work, the more money you'll make, right? That's all bull crap, okay? It's not working in retail. It's not managing at, Carl's Jr., right? Like, you went to college or you finished high school, you did everything you were supposed to. Why shouldn't you put all your talents to work, right? Like, how hard is it going to be? It's going to take you 2 weeks to figure out how to be a shift manager at McDonald's. And it's going to take you about 2 minutes to figure out the people you can't count on that you're going to have to be doing their job even though you're the manager, okay? I met a guy recently, if you follow my comments, you probably would have seen him, but he was working in the restaurant business as a regional manager. And still, he would have, so he's college educated, actually has a master's degree. He was working as a regional manager for a very well-known restaurant chain. They have locations everywhere I go. And no, it's not fast food. It's not like McDonald's or Burger King or anything, but it's a regional, or excuse me, it's a national chain. I mean, I don't know if they're out here in California, but they're in a lot of places. And he was the regional manager in like southern Ohio, northern Kentucky. So Cincinnati area, big metro area. And he said he would get called at home and have to go in and actually do entry-level people's jobs, because that was expected of him, even though he was the regional manager, right? And so he came into trucking because he's like, I can make good money. He's educated. He's had other careers. I can make good money and call my own shots. I mean, that's what everybody says they want to do anyway. So I'm not saying Prime is the company you should come to, although I think Prime, and I've talked about it many times, has a lot of advantages. Not the least of which is that it has a system that's kind of been proved to work. If somebody has a lot of work ethic, they, as either a company driver or a lease operator, can be very successful here. You know, I met a young couple, and they are a couple, and they started a 3-year lease. And you know what I told them? I said, if you guys play your cards right, because they're I think they're planning on getting married. They might have already gotten married. I haven't talked to them in a while. But I said, if you guys play your cards right, and they both had previous careers in the public sector. But I said, if you play your cards right on a 3-year lease, if you guys just run and just live on the road, because they don't have kids or anything, they don't really need to be tied to any particular area. I said, you guys could easily have $100,000 sitting around at your disposal. And then you can decide what you want to do with the rest of your life. But you know that you can drive a truck and make good money. And when you have a couple that's like that, and I've talked to people, that are like, hey, my wife's going to train, my significant other's going to train. That's just a recipe for success, right? Because then you got somebody with you that, knows you and helps motivate you, and you do the same for them. So regardless of your situation, if you're like, oh, I don't want to leave my girlfriend, man, get your girlfriend in the truck, get her a CDL, and go see America. It's amazing to me, the people that I meet, that even though they've had other careers and were successful at them, even though they're college educated, they've been in the military, how many people have never been to every state in the lower 48? And I'll say this: getting trips to Alaska and to Hawaii are a little tougher until you got some seniority in the organization. But just the lower 48, there's so much out there to see. My wife's from Southern Cal. I've been all over California. I drove up a road today, and it's not like super off the beaten path, not by any stretch of the imagination. I drove up a road today I had never driven before, not even in my Sprinter. So it was like kind of cool. I got to see something from a different vantage point that I hadn't seen before. And even the roads you go down, that you've been down a bunch of times, I can't tell you how many times I go down a road, and maybe it's because I'm riding in the right seat. I'm like, wow, I never noticed that there before. It's a new learning experience every day. And if you can make 6 figures driving around America, the little stuff we talk about, like being stuck at a shipper or having some hassles, that just melts away. It just melts away. I was telling my trainee, I said, there are days when this is a job, but there are a lot of days when it's just a damn cool thing to be doing. I'm like, I'm driving through someplace I maybe have been before and enjoy. Maybe I haven't been there before. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. It opens your mind up, and you learn new stuff, and you read some road signs. You're like, wow, I didn't know that happened there, or I didn't know that was there. So that's one of the things about trucking that I really do like. The other thing that right now is incredibly hot, and if you got some skills and you got some physical capacity, obviously pass a drug test, the railroads. I know that the railroads don't have the greatest schedule if you're in train service, but they have incredible benefits and they guarantee salary. These guys and gals are union, and I'm saying this from personal experience. As far as like family members go, my dad was a railroad guy. I've had other relatives that are involved with the railroad. You know, they are right now. Railroads are desperate to hire. They do. I mean, one of the downsides is you have a very irregular schedule. But they guarantee you pay. Like a lot of the train crew jobs, some of these guys, even at the entry level, are guaranteed 10 grand a month. Entry level, like just right out of conductor training. And you know, that's not too shabby. And then if you work plenty of hours, you're gonna surpass that. Is that the perfect job for having a wife and kids? Maybe, maybe not, right? But I know this from being in the military. I know this from driving a truck. You have to share with your family what every scenario is going to look like, when you're going to be home. You got to keep your promises, not miss the big events, right? Don't go home. I was telling my trainee, I don't go home just for the hell of it, right? I like to be home, but I try to have more bang for my buck and be home longer. So every significant event I want to try to be there. And every holiday where the family's getting together, I want to try to be there. So that's why I'll stay out for weeks at a time, and train so I can pile up money and, you know, keep the wheels turning even when I take a couple 3 weeks off. Because I'm working through June and July, but a lot of August I'm not going to be on the road. So those are a couple of ideas. Now, I'll tell you another idea, and I think about this often. HVAC technician. Unless you've been in a coma for the last 5 years or so, you know that the weather is getting harsher and harsher. Whether it's extremes of heat or cold, it's getting harsher. I think we're fast approaching the time where every structure in this country is going to have mandatory air conditioning. In other words, if you own a rental property, you know, right now, pretty much any state, I mean, I'd be shocked if there's any state that doesn't have a law that says landlords have to provide heat in the wintertime for their tenants. I think that we are fast approaching a time where every single landlord is going to have to provide air conditioning. Now, it may not be that they have to retrofit buildings with central air conditioning, but it may come a time where they are required to provide at least a window unit to their tenants and guarantee that always is working. Heat-related deaths are the biggest weather, you know, like every other cause of death, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, derechos, whatever you want to say, hailstorms, pestilence, everything else added together does not equal the amount of people that die from heat-related illness and injury during these hot spells. So HVAC technicians, I think, are going to be more in demand than ever before. I think just people that can work on these reefer trailers. I think you're going to see more and more cargo moving that's temperature controlled. I hauled a load the other day that was temp controlled, and every single one of those things is just going to get put on a grocery store shelf at room temperature. But, you know, grocery stores are cool-ish, and so they didn't want to ship stuff across the country and have it be in 105 degree weather without being temp controlled, even though it's technically all was non-perishable. So that's another thing. And you know, all of these are blue collar jobs, but all of them are great jobs for people that have higher education. Why? Because to be successful in them, oftentimes those skills that you developed in college come in handy. Managing a business, understanding the big picture. HVAC systems, for example, they're not a joke anymore, especially if you work in a commercial environment. So that you got to be pretty smart to work on those big systems. I've met people that do it. It's not for the faint of heart. You got to know what you're doing. So anyway, if you've just graduated from college or high school, congratulations, but now it's time to get to work. While you're figuring out what it is you have a passion for. Because I have a passion for putting food on the table and enjoying my time off and having enough money to do that. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. I hope this inspires somebody to do something that they hadn't thought of. And if it does, I'd love to hear about it, because I think I've mentioned about having a community here. I think having a community and people sharing thoughts, it's always a good thing. So anyway, take care, be safe. We're picking up a load in Bakersfield tomorrow. Then we're going to run it up to Salt Lake City. I need a transmission service. I need, what else do I need? Oil change. Air dryer filter. Oh, and by the way, I came upon another Prime driver with a broken down Peterbilt today, and I tried to help him. He couldn't get his truck started. We tried jumping it. His APU was working, still wouldn't start. He was calling RA. But I'm going to tell you something he said, and I got witnesses for this. He said he had a Peterbilt before. Or excuse me, he had a Freightliner before, and somebody convinced him to get a Peterbilt, and he says as soon as this lease is done, I'm going back to a Freightliner. So that's a small sample size, but I just share that with you. So anyway, take care. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.